There's nothing wrong with wanting to be pushed, challenged, even hurt and humiliated. Loads of submissives fantasize about being used, abused, denied, embarrassed, or treated as if they're beneath a partner. That's all genuinely valid erotic material. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing at all. But the danger starts when you stop treating it as fantasy and start building your emotional life around someone who genuinely doesn't care whether you're happy. There's a certain type of online dom, the cultured, cruel, pussy-free educator, that often waves their first red flag because their literary references are actually pretty basic once you get past the name drop. But the reason so many of them go with this persona is because we often confuse sophistication for knowledge and skill, and pretty much no one who uses sophistication as a brand is doing it because they're unaware of that. And I meant as a brand. Doms can obviously be literate and ethical. Hey, sweetie, without saying, I read Nietzsche, ergo, I'm better than you. If you recognize enough of these markers in someone you're thinking of admiring, following, or serving, slow down and think. Porn's safe because it isn't real. You can close the tab. You can be a pathetic, tiny, useless loser for 20 minutes and then go back to having a perfectly normal, competent adult life. A relationship isn't like that. If the person in front of you actually holds power in your life, emotional, financial, social, practical, or sexual, then the way they talk about you and your desires matters. So when you're looking at an online dom, learn to split the stuff from the stuff. Some of what they write, some of what I write, is just clickbait for attention. I'm so perfect. You're so weak. Like and subscribe. Easy to see, easy to craft, easy to fake. What's not easy to fake is long-form true stories about past relationships, practical kink, and actual dynamics in a world that includes mood swings, conflicting interests, bills, dinner, and someone coming round tomorrow to fix the AC unit. Which of these sounds truer to you? I have a fully kitted out dungeon in the basement where I let him sleep in a cage, and on Valentine's Day, I allow him the floor next to my bed. Or, I had a St. Andrew's cross of sorts. We built it from pallets during COVID, which wasn't cheap since timber was really expensive at the time, and it took ages to sand it down so he wouldn't get splinters. We had to break it down when we moved, because it wouldn't fit through the door. Details tell the story. So, when you see a dom tell you a supposedly true story, ask yourself, how much detail is here? Is there any acknowledgement of practicality or real life? Or is it just a sexy fantasy? If this was real, if she was my actual partner, and this is how she consistently treated me, how would my day-to-day life feel in 6 months? What about 2 years? A lot of doms will complain about bad behavior, overstepping boundaries, pushy subs who want a top from the bottom, men who treat them like a sex toy to be used and discarded. I'm one of them. That's honestly the default. Most messages I get online are annoying. Venting from a dom is normal and healthy. What's not healthy, what's different, is someone whose default stance toward the very concept of men and male desire is revulsion. Here's a real quote from someone who markets themselves as a lifestyle dom. There are so many benefits to a female-led relationship. I get complete focus on my pleasure without worrying about what he wants. Without worrying about his wants? Girl, If you don't care about your partner's wants, you don't deserve the partner. Kink doesn't change that. It magnifies that imperative. If a relationship has a power imbalance, it's more important to care about the other's interiority, not less. You'll also see some doms talk about subs, not subs' kinks, but subs themselves, as beneath contempt as a default. Humiliation that punches down at you for existing, rather than at specific behaviors you've consented to having mocked. That's fine for fantasy. But there's a difference between you don't deserve women in an SPH cuckolding scene or the like, and the same in general content or discussion just because you're a sub. The latter isn't normal, and it's not okay. If a dom treats your desire as inherently disgusting or annoying, and never balances that with any in-depth language about valuing it, don't delude yourself. She's not strict. She's potentially dangerous. She's saying that the fact you exist and desire is a problem. And that can be hot for 5 minutes, but over years, it's corrosive. So if they talk about relationships like this, they're either lying for a fantasy, fine, or they're telling the truth and they're to be avoided. Read how she writes about herself versus how she writes about her subs. There'll usually be an imbalance. We all front-load ourselves. But if someone's presenting themselves as an educator, then wouldn't you expect them to detail the wants, desires, needs, and experiences of the sub? Wouldn't you expect them to understand, in exacting detail, what goes through the mind of someone who submits? When she talks about herself, you'll see detailed feelings about what denial, control, and exclusion do for her. Long paragraphs about how certain dynamics make her feel, and very precise accounts of her fantasies. About her partners? That detail is all of a sudden totally absent. We found a balance that met both our needs. We both agreed it was hotter this way. You see what's missing? Those are real quotes from a real online dom who sells herself as an authority on this life. And there's zero knowledge or even curiosity about the man's inner life. What's it like for him to live in long-term denial? How does he handle jealousy or shame? What are his fantasies and vulnerabilities beyond generic service and worship? If a dom never seems interested in his inner world, you can bet your last dollar she won't ever give a damn about yours either. And she's no sophisticated educator, because no educator would allow themselves such a large gap in their knowledge. You're not a student to her. You're a resource to be exploited via your kinks. And as to those kinks, well, to pick one, denial can be cool. I fucking love it. When it's negotiated, consensual, in service of both our enjoyment. There's no joy in saying, you never get sex if all it does is cause you misery. That's not doming. That's not consensual sadism. That's psychopathic. So consider that when you read, I don't do PIV. I get off on the idea that no man will ever be inside me again. My dream relationship is holding the key to his ultimate desire and denying him forever. The more someone talks like this, the more you should assume they are genuinely uninterested in anything that centers your pleasure. Your arousal is nothing more than a toy for their gratification, not something to respect or honor. And look where that gratification comes from. I don't really want to sleep with overly hairy men, but do you think I get off on the idea of not sleeping with them? That's weird. If you're honestly happy, never getting straightforward, non-humiliating sexual fulfillment again, then, maybe you'll be fine with someone like that. But almost no one's like that in real life. We all have needs. Some doms like to present as educators. Long Reddit posts, Q&As, detailed YouTube videos about watching out for unethical mistresses. They get the basics right. General decency, kink 101. But what happens when they get specific? Because if every piece of advice ends up funneling you toward one very particular model, whatever it is, permanent chastity, pussy-free, cuckoldry, extreme asymmetry, submit to me and me alone as your hypnomistress, a relationship where her pleasure is the only real point of consideration, then you're not getting a neutral education. You're getting recruitment material. Not every dom has to or should even try educating. Teaching's harder than it looks, and it's okay to just like sexy things. But if someone presents as an educator and this is happening, I'd side-eye them. And I'd put in a little extra effort to pay attention to their stories. I mean, everyone edits their life story. Online doms do it more than most for obvious performance and protection reasons. Pseudonyms, location changes, Findom-funded lives of luxury, elaborate dungeons. That's normal. But watch out for people whose self-narrative shifts depending on what they're selling this week. What's their origin story? Does it sound real or like a porn fantasy? You know what it sounds like when a male virgin boasts about his first time with a woman. You know the signs of the lie. Apply them to a dom. Does the story shift? Change completely? Does it read like a porn fantasy? If you're thinking of giving someone power over you, even if only as an online creator, ask yourself each and every time, does this person seem more invested in making money as a character than in being accountable as an adult? Humiliation can be loving. It can be skillful. It can be something you both treasure. And sometimes it can be really, really cruel, blunt, demeaning, the sort of thing a vanilla person would see and shriek about. That's not invalid. It's just a different style. But what keeps it safe over time is that both of you know, on a fundamental level, what's said in scene is not literally believed. There's a clear off mode where you are cared for and treated with respect. She can and will say explicitly, I don't think you're worthless. If a dom, even if just online, even if just selling a product, never bothers to make that distinction, routinely talks about men as if they are genuinely beneath her, integrates contempt into every aspect of how she describes relationships, then you should assume her contempt isn't a costume. It's how she looks at you for real. And that's a shitty basis for a relationship. But Sarah, I don't want a relationship with an online dom. Well, if it's a random clip, no. But if you keep coming back to the same creator, then that is a relationship of sorts. And one of those sorts is emotional. But the question is, what does it matter how she might behave in a fake, real-life relationship with you when all you're doing is watching a 10-minute JOI or listening to an audio? If all you want is to jerk off with instruction, then sure. What does it matter if she's fake, dumb, or cruel in real life, so long as she's hot and authoritative, right? Well, if you keep coming back to the same creator, then her view is going to influence yours. Not because you're especially weak or pliable, but because that's how people work. So if her view is toxic, if it's based on you not as a willing sub who takes as much joy, and realistically online, more joy from the interaction than she does, but is instead predicated on the notion that you are a tool or a resource for her. And don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying you should only seek soft, romantic, hand-holdy GFE doms. You're allowed to want someone sharp, demanding, and cruel. You're allowed to be turned on by the idea of a woman who brutalizes you for her own amusement. But see what was there? You being turned on. And if she doesn't care about that, if she presents that as a fault, also, if you're the type of person who subscribes to a creator, then the nature of that creator is important. All the more so when the content is about your intimate insecurities. The distinction isn't naughty versus nice. It's, does she show any evidence of being genuinely curious about subs' inner lives, or only about servicing her own kinks? Does her idea of a good dynamic include you being able to say, this isn't working for me, without it being treated as betrayal? When she talks about denial, is it one tool among many? Or a moral crusade where your sexual frustration is the entire point of your existence? Does her educational content help you explore what you want? Or just try to persuade you that her preferred kink is your destiny? And I don't mean on the micro. She won't show interest in you specifically, unless that's what you've both agreed to. She couldn't even if she wanted to. There are only so many hours in a week and there's a lot of subs out there. But macro, does she ever look at a sub's desire beyond likes to serve me? If you find someone who can be cruel in play and kind in truth, who can talk about your needs with the same depth and interest she talks about her own, and who doesn't need you to suffer to feel good about herself, congratulations, you hit the jackpot. If instead you find yourself looking at someone whose entire vibe is, you exist to be milked and humiliated, financially drained for my amusement, and any unhappiness or worry you feel is proof you're doing it right, that's as red as flags get, and you deserve better. So, that was just some thoughts. No, they don't apply to everyone. Yes, I had some specific people in mind when I wrote it. And no, I won't tell you who they are because I'm not interested in a flame war like a fucking teenager. But I am interested in subs actually enjoying their kink, which is what sarahblackhypno.com is all about. You can follow me for free and try out some gated content for about $5, which obviously is the only way I get to keep doing this for a living. But if going on another website and clicking some buttons seems like, oh my God, so much effort, then like, subscribe, leave a comment. YouTube pays me nothing, but it does act as pretty good advertising when I get noticed, and you doing those 3 easy things is what kicks the algorithm into gear.